Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's English listening practice. In this session, you'll listen to a fun story and try to guess. Burger with a heart. It's a perfect way to improve your English while having fun. So grab your headphones, focus, and let's dive in. The icy November wind swept through the bustling streets, carrying with it the aroma of grilled meat and fried potatoes from a nearby burger joint. People rushed in and out of the brightly lit restaurant, their laughter and conversations creating a comforting hum that contrasted with the cold, silent evening outside. Among the crowd, unnoticed and forgotten, stood a little girl, no older than 10. Her frail figure was draped in clothes too thin and too torn for the biting cold. The oversized jacket she wore barely clung to her tiny frame, its fabric frayed and patched in places, offering little protection against the chill. Her eyes, wide and hungry, were locked on the glowing menu board displayed behind the restaurant's glass window. The vibrant pictures of juicy burgers, crisp golden fries, and fizzy sodas seemed to mock her empty stomach. She pressed her small, dirt-smudged hands against the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she leaned closer, desperate for a taste of the feast she could only dream of. The warm light inside the restaurant spilled onto the pavement, illuminating her face, which was marked by a mix of innocence and hardship. Her cheeks were hollow, her lips chapped, but it was her eyes that told the true story, a story of longing, of days spent searching for scraps, and of nights spent curling up against a cold, her stomach twisting in hunger. Every now and then, she would swallow hard, as if the act alone could quench the unbearable ache in her belly. Inside, families sat around tables, sharing meals and laughter. Children her age played with colorful toys that came with their meals, their faces glowing with joy. The girl watched them intently, not with envy, but with a quiet yearning, as though she was imagining herself in their place, warm, full, and loved. She stood still as the world around her moved on, her presence a silent plea, unnoticed by the crowd rushing past. A gust of wind whipped through the street, making her shiver. She hugged herself tighter, her tiny fingers clutching the edges of her jacket. Still, she didn't move. Her gaze remained fixed on the pictures inside, as if willing them to leap off the board and into her empty hands. For a child so small, she carried a weight far too heavy for her years, and yet her resolve to stand there, despite the cold, despite the hunger, spoke of a quiet strength, a determination born out of sheer necessity. It was in this moment, as she stood outside the restaurant, unnoticed and longing, that a man approached the door. His polished shoes clicked softly on the pavement, his tailored coat flapping gently in the wind. He reached for the door handle, his mind elsewhere, when his eyes caught sight of the girl. Something about her ragged clothes, her hollow cheeks, her unwavering gaze, stopped him in his tracks. For a moment, he simply stared, as though time itself had frozen. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, not of the girl, but of the pain in her eyes, pain that he, too, had known long ago. The sharp click of polished leather shoes echoed faintly on the pavement as a well-dressed man approached the burger joint. His tailored wool coat, dark and pristine, rippled slightly in the cold November wind. A scarf neatly wrapped around his neck offered warmth against the chill, and his gloved hands swung a sleek leather briefcase. The man's appearance exuded success, an air of confidence and comfort that only years of steady progress could provide. But as he reached for the door handle of the bustling restaurant, his eyes fell upon a small figure standing motionless just outside. The sight stopped him in his tracks. A little girl, barely clothed against the biting cold, stood hunched over, her gaze fixated on the glowing menu inside. Her face, thin and pale, seemed out of place against the warm, inviting backdrop of the restaurant. Her hollow cheeks and trembling frame told a story of hardship, a tale of hunger and loneliness that pierced through the protective layers of the man's own carefully curated life. For a moment, he couldn't move. Something about her small, fragile figure struck a chord deep within him, awakening a memory he thought he had buried long ago. The way she clutched her tattered jacket and leaned forward to peer through the glass reminded him of himself, years ago, when he too had stood outside a bakery with empty pockets, dreaming of the warmth and fullness that a single loaf of bread could bring. The man's throat tightened as the memory swept over him. He could almost feel the ache of his younger self, that familiar pang of hunger gnawing at his stomach. He remembered the bitter cold that crept into his bones and the way he had pressed his face against the window, willing the food to appear in his hands. For a moment, it felt as if he were looking at a mirror reflecting his past, his struggles, his desperation, his unspoken hope. Shaking off the heaviness of the memory, the man's eyes softened as they focused on the girl. She was still oblivious to his presence, her attention entirely consumed by the vibrant pictures of hamburgers and fries. She swallowed hard, her tiny fingers trembling as they clung to the edges of her jacket. Her longing was painfully visible, and the man's heart ached with the weight of her silent plea. He took a deep breath and knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice gentle but firm enough to cut through the hum of the street. The girl startled slightly, her wide, hungry eyes darting up to meet his. For a moment, there was fear in her expression, but it quickly gave way to curiosity and a faint glimmer of hope. "Are you hungry?" he asked, his tone warm and understanding, as if he already knew the answer. The girl hesitated, her small frame stiffening with uncertainty. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The man offered her a kind smile and extended his hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you something to eat." The warmth of the burger joint hit them as soon as they stepped inside, a sharp contrast to the biting cold outside. The little girl hesitated at the doorway, glancing back as though unsure if she truly belonged there. The man, sensing her hesitation, gave her a reassuring smile and gently gestured for her to follow him. Her small, tentative steps brought her closer to the counter, where the aroma of sizzling patties and freshly baked buns filled the air. "Go ahead," the man said kindly, nodding toward the brightly lit menu above the counter. "Choose whatever you'd like." The girl's wide eyes scanned the vibrant pictures of hamburgers stacked high with fresh lettuce, tomatoes, and melted cheese. There were also sides of golden fries and frothy cups of soda. Her gaze lingered on a picture of a classic burger meal, a hearty sandwich paired with crispy fries and a drink. She swallowed hard, her hands nervously clutching the edges of her tattered jacket. The cashier, a cheerful young woman, smiled down at her. "Hi there, sweetheart. What can I get for you?" The girl hesitated, glancing at the man as if to confirm it was truly okay to speak. He nodded encouragingly. "Go on," he said gently. "A hamburger," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "And fries, if that's okay." The man chuckled softly. "Of course, it's okay. And a drink, maybe a cola." Her face lit up just a little, and she nodded shyly. "Yes, please." The man turned to the cashier. "We'll have one classic burger meal with fries and a cola. And you know what? Let's make it two, one for me as well." The cashier punched in the order, her fingers flying over the register keys. "Anything else? Maybe some ketchup for the fries." "Yes, please," the man replied with a smile, glancing at the girl. She looked up at him, her expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "That'll be $15.75, the cashier said. The man handed over a crisp $20 bill without hesitation, waving off the change with a quiet, "Keep it." Moments later, the tray arrived, laden with steaming food. The girl's eyes widened at the sight. The burger was bigger than anything she had imagined, its soft bun glistening under the restaurant lights. The fries sat neatly in their paper pouch, and the cola sparkled in its cup, condensation beading along the surface. The man carried the tray to a small booth by the window, pulling out a chair for the girl before taking his own seat. "Here we go," he said, placing the meal in front of her. "Dig in." She stared at the food for a moment, as though afraid it might vanish if she looked away. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up the burger and took a cautious bite. Her eyes closed, and a small, contented smile spread across her face. For the first time in a long while, she felt warmth, not just from the food, but from the kindness of a stranger. As the little girl savored each bite of her burger, the man sat across from her, sipping his soda with a gentle smile. The warmth of the restaurant seemed to wrap around them both, creating a rare moment of comfort amidst the cold world outside. After a few quiet moments, the man broke the silence. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice soft and inviting. She paused mid-bite, looking up at him cautiously. "Lila," she said hesitantly, her voice still barely above a whisper. "That's a beautiful name," the man said warmly. "I'm Jonathan. It's nice to meet you, Lila." She nodded shyly, her gaze dropping back to her fries. The man watched her carefully, sensing her hesitation. "Do you come here often, Lila?" he asked gently, not wanting to push too hard. Her small shoulders shrugged. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not inside, just outside." Jonathan felt his chest tighten at her words. He could hear the unspoken story behind them, the long days of hunger, the cold nights with no safe place to sleep. "Where are your parents?" he ventured cautiously. "They're not here," she replied, her voice tinged with sadness. She didn't elaborate, and Jonathan didn't press further. Instead, he decided to share something of his own. "You know, Lila," he began, leaning forward slightly, "when I was your age, I used to stand outside places like this too. I didn't have much then, just like you. But someone was kind to me once, just like I'm being kind to you now. And that small kindness, it changed everything for me." Lila looked up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Really?" she asked. "Really?" Jonathan nodded. "Sometimes Even when things seem really hard, a little kindness can make a big difference. And you? You're stronger than you think, Lila. As Lila finished the last of her fries and took a final sip of her cola, her face lit up with a smile, a small but genuine expression of joy that softened her otherwise tired features. She looked at Jonathan, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." Jonathan smiled back, his heart full. "You're welcome, Lila. Everyone deserves to feel full and warm, especially on a cold night like this." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the world outside feeling distant and unimportant. Then, Jonathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He slid it across the table toward her. "If you ever need help, real help, call this number," he said. "I can't promise much, but I can promise I'll try." Lila hesitated, then picked up the card with trembling fingers. "You mean it?" "I do," Jonathan replied firmly. "Remember, Lila, you're not alone." As they stepped back outside into the cold, Lila's steps seemed a little lighter, her heart a little warmer. She clutched the card tightly in her hand, a small but tangible promise of hope. And as Jonathan walked away, he glanced back one last time, watching as Lila disappeared into the night with a full stomach and, perhaps for the first time in a long while, a flicker of faith in the kindness of the world. Great job! What do you think about the video? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, practice makes perfect, so be sure to come back for more fun English exercises. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more English learning content. See you next time.